Was this movie always planned to be about the ethics of journalism, or was it at one point meant to be more of the story of the event with a bit of journalism? And then when did that balance find its level?
Well, it's exactly as you say. We planned it a little bit differently, actually. We wanted, at the very beginning, wanted to tell the movie from various perspectives, also from the politician's side, from the police side. So we did a broad research on that. My two previous movies were in a complete different direction. And when approaching a subject like this, with this relevance that it has, even still for today, the first thing I wanted to do is, before even writing one word, we wanted to make as much research as possible. And it was actually during that stage then that we found that specific perspective, because we then learned more and more on how important the role of the media was on that day, and how it was a turning point in media history. And we had one conversation with the real Jeffrey Mason, the character played by Tom O'Gara, which then, listening to him, what they went through in that control room during this 22-hour marathon of broadcasting, that was the first time that we thought about maybe we can tell it entirely from that perspective.
September 5 is almost a closed room drama. Most of it, 90% of it, I think, happens in the control room. So tell me, as a director, how you keep that exciting. We know how the story ends, and we're in one room for a lot of it, and yet I found myself edging towards the front of my seat. So tell me how you pulled that off. It's a great trick.
Thank you. That's a great compliment, because actually, like when I told you about Jeffrey Mason, and when I talked to him, and when I asked him certain things, like if they were thinking about these bigger questions or so, he said one thing to me, and that stayed with me. He said, like, no, because there was simply no time. We were just busy covering what was happening in front of us, basically. So that's when I thought, this is the way that the movie has to feel. And to answer the question about, I personally, I'm a big admirer of films that actually draw their strength from a certain limitation in space, and time, and also perspective. For example, a movie that we talked about is Rear Window, Hitchcock, right? You see everything through the perspective of the camera, and you're always with Cary Grant in that apartment. Or a film like German film Das Boot, where you also have a major event going on the outside, but you always only see it through from the perspective of that crew trapped in that very dense space. So I thought it was an interesting challenge on how can we tell a story from that. I have to say, what then plays a very important part in that I have to give to my editor, Hans-Jörg Weisbrich, is then the editing. Like, basically, we just collected material, and then it's like, really, he brought it into shape, and I think is responsible for you, the feeling that you had when watching the movie.
Have you come to some conclusions about news gathering and the responsibility of the news to tell us a story? You have to weigh the public's right to know against the situation. It's probably different in a lot of situations, but what conclusions did you come to after parsing the questions that this movie raises?
That's a good question, and that's a question that I would love to clearly answer, but I think I can't. And also that's the approach also that we had when writing the script, that to a lot of these bigger questions, I don't know if there are simple answers. Like, let's say the one question that I face, like, can we show violence on TV? I think there's, of course, reasons not to do that. But we have also seen certain coverage where showing something extreme helped actually to a positive development. So in my opinion, and I think that's the interesting thing about our movie, is that it was sports people reporting on this. So in a way, they had an innocent view on this reporting on crisis. So we could raise all these questions that they also don't know the answer. But of course, they had to go on air.